Exciting news, everyone. My new book, I Wish I'd Quit Sooner, is officially out now. You can grab it on all major book retailers and online distributors, and the audiobook is also available on all the popular listening apps. Visit drlaura.live or check the link in the show notes to get your copy today. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Where Work Meets Life. I'm Dr. Laura, and I'm excited to be here today with Sabina Nawaz, a CEO coach, a keynote speaker, and an author who I had the opportunity to run into serendipitously at an event at South by Southwest, a major event and conference that we were both speaking at. We both have books, and we realized we had a lot in common. Sabina lives in Vancouver, so like me, she lives in Canada, and our books complement each other. We're going to talk a lot about her book today. Let me tell you a bit more about this amazing individual. Sabina is an executive coach who advises C-level leaders and teams across Fortune 500 companies, across government agencies, nonprofits, the list goes on. She works around the world, and she delivers dozens of keynotes and conferences around the world and teaches on the faculty of Eastern and Drexel University. So like me, she teaches as well. And she's had a 14-year career at Microsoft. And what's interesting about this is Sabina has worked her way, while at Microsoft, she no longer is, but she worked her way up to be leading the company's executive development and succession planning across, get this, 11,000 managers and nearly 1,000 executives. She was responsible for the succession planning. So she knows so much about leadership development and then has taken that into working with leaders all over the world in different industries. And her new book is called You're the Boss, Become the Manager You Want to Be and That Others Need. And I think this is so important as a topic today. Welcome to the show, Sabina.
Thank you so much for that generous introduction, Laura. It's been great meeting you at South by Southwest, and I'm really looking forward to digging into this conversation about this continuum of managers and management quality.
Absolutely. And I really do believe it is on a continuum. I almost see it as a bell curve from the truly toxic on one end and the truly great on the other. And I think what we're both trying to do is really build more great leaders because the world needs more great leaders, Sabina. And your book is about that, is it not?
Absolutely.
So tell me more. What inspired you to write it? Tell us, why you called the book what you called it and the journey that you've been on with it.
Well, Laura, first of all, what inspired me to write the book is a realization I came to through my own behavior, which I'm not proud of. I was a lousy manager at Microsoft. And now that wasn't always true. At first, I managed software teams for about 9 years, and people told me I was the best boss they'd had. I coached them, I cared about them. Those were great years. And then everything changed. When I was pregnant, I took on my manager's job running leadership development. And fast forward 5 months, I'm putting on lipstick for the first time, returning from parental leave, when my assistant Lori calls me frantic. Where are you? Steve expects you in 30 minutes. Lori reads me the memo I'm supposed to discuss with Steve Ballmer, the CEO of Microsoft, while I hit warp speed on the freeway. And that set the tone. Inbox overflowing, calendar packed, infant at home, no sleep, no peace, no patience. And you know what? Overnight, I morph from caring and nurturing to snippy and short. I micromanaged. I was short with people, impatient. And the best part is, I thought I was being efficient, or the worst part, until a colleague stops by and says, Zach is crying in his office because of what you said. And that made me think, wow, my whole body, of course, flushed with shame. And I thought, how did I get here? How did I go from being caring and compassionate, that best boss ever, to somebody people were afraid of and really didn't like? So for me, when you talk about that continuum, Laura, I don't believe there is such a thing as a purely good boss or a purely bad boss. They are both there in the same person, because it is not power that corrupts us. It is pressure. And under pressure, we have a choice point. And in that nanosecond, more often than not, if we're not mindful, we're going into that worst boss, that toxic boss end of the continuum.
So it's about that intense pressure and how we handle that pressure. And it's a choice we make of how we want to come forward in the world as a leader, but it can become subconscious. We're not even aware of it, like in your case, Sabina.
Absolutely. And here's why, because there are dual forces at play here. You've got pressure, which is this silent corruptor, where we're losing patience, we're snapping, we're providing harsher criticism than we intend. And then you've got power, which makes you oblivious to your impact because nobody tells the person in a position of power what they don't want to hear. So with pressure and power together, it keeps us firmly ensconced in those toxic behaviors.
Yes, really interesting. I love how you describe that power, and power is the positional power, right? The way you look at it.
Positional power. Exactly. Exactly. It's a great divider. That position creates a gap. And so my book has got several pressure pitfalls and several power gaps, and then tools for each of those pitfalls and gaps on how to overcome those. Now, aside from my personal story, of course, what also prompted me to write the book is because I coach CEOs for a living. And when I coach them, I interview about a dozen of their team members. What's it like to work for this manager? Over the years, I have interviewed over 1,000 people. And the backbone of the book is based on 12,000 pages of verbatim data of what people think about their bosses.
That is fascinating. And I'm sure there's been some really clear themes that come out. And you talked about pressure, so certain types of pressure. And I want to know, what are the top uh, themes that come out when a boss is under pressure that makes them difficult to work with?
Yeah, well, there's several, but I'll give you one of the most common ones that comes up. And this isn't true of just managers, it's true of most people. It just becomes a lot more impactful in not so good a way when it's a manager because so many people are beholden to them. And that is called the sole provider trap. Sole as in SOLE, the only. And this goes something like this. The more pressure rises, the more I think as a manager, I'm the only one who can, or I'm the only one who must. So you've got the caretaker sole provider who says, this is a particularly busy time of year, or my team's already crushed. I'm going to jump in and do it. And of course, when is it not a particularly busy time of year? You've got the whack-a-mole champ who, like the carnival game, takes that mallet to their task list. This is the person, and I'm guilty of this, who writes down a task on the to-do list, even though it's done, just for the pleasure of crossing it off. And we've got the Flash, who's moving fast, talking fast, listening to audio 1.5 times the speed. By the way, if you're a Flash and you're listening to my book, because I'm also a Flash, you won't understand it if you listen to it at 1.5 times the speed. And lastly, you have the straight A student. And these are bosses who are spending inordinate amounts of time debating the merits of the placement of a colon versus a semicolon. Look, none of these are bad things when done in moderation. Who does not want to help out their team, do an excellent job, move fast, and get a ton done? Those are all great things. Hold on to that vision. Change the methodology. Because when we do that under pressure, and when we do that a lot, of course, what happens is we're adding more and more and more pressure to our plates. And we're also crushing others, crushing their creativity, crushing their motivation. They go, well, she's got it all figured out. I guess she doesn't need me to chime in with anything. So that sole provider trap is one that generates a lot of pressure.
Yeah, pressure on ourselves, and the others who work with us are not able to grow because they're not able to try and learn and fail and experiment.
Yes. Or like, when you're saying, I'm jumping in to help them, and they're going, well, you're blocking my upward visibility. I wanted to be the one presenting to your boss.
Yeah, that it's so interesting. Now, we had a little conversation about how you don't use the term leader, and I'm curious about that. I had a reaction to that. I thought, What?" Because I'm all about cultivating leadership in leaders. But tell me more about the distinctions.
Yes, so I do use the word leadership, but not the word leader. Leader as a noun specifically. So leadership and exercising leadership as a verb is totally fine in my book. Yeah, it's interesting because uh, maybe there's one left in by accident, but I've tried my best in my 170 so pages of the book to never have the word leader as a noun ever mentioned. And here's why. Here's why. The leadership is an act, it's not a role. It does not depend on your position or your title. Anybody can engage in acts of leadership no matter where they are. When we call somebody with a position of authority, see, we conflate authority with leadership. And when we call somebody in a position of authority a leader, it immediately discounts the possibility of anyone else engaging in acts of leadership.
Mm.
Because now you are the leader. You get paid the big bucks. You tell us what to do. And guess what? In today's world where there is no certainty, where things are changing rapidly, nobody's got cracked the code on how to deal with disruptive technology, geopolitical changes, global conflict. It's great for others to keep themselves off the hook by calling you leader. And guess what? You're going to soak that up. It's seductive. And so, but then suddenly you find yourself at 3 a.m. or getting up earlier and earlier every morning because now you're left holding the bag. So instead of calling one person leader, if we simply say manager or management team or and so on, and ignite as many points of leadership in an organization, that's what our current times call for.
Right. That is interesting. I mean, it's making me think. I mean, agree leadership is a verb and it's a set of behaviors and qualities, and we want to build great leadership qualities. I also it's such a term that I've used my whole career about we want to help make this person a great leader and they happen to be in a position of authority, but we want them to be a great leader. So I don't know if I'm there with you, but you're making me think, which is I think as a thought leader, that's part of it is challenging and making us think.
That's great, Laura. So this is not original thinking of mine. It comes from Ron Heifetz and Marty Linsky of Harvard, who've done a lot of work on adaptive leadership. And I was like you. I mean, I could see your wheels turning as I was talking about this. And I was like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I'm like, yeah, that's just, become so much part and parcel of our vocabulary. The problem is when something becomes part and parcel of our vocabulary, unbeknownst to us, it also shifts our mindset. And so it took me about a year or two of dragging my heels on this and going, I'm not sure. I'm not buying this yet. I'm just renting it for now. Now I totally get it. And I see it. I see it act out in organizations where managers jump in and take the bait and believe that they are the ones who have to provide all the answers. It goes straight back into that sole provider trap.
Right, and it can build ego too if we look at it as I'm on a podium, I'm the leader. You'll see the book No Ego in my background. So Cy Wakeman has been on the podcast and I love her work around ego. I think ego is one of the major perils when we lead with ego.
Exactly. And yes, Laura, and there's a chapter in my book called The Myth of the Exceptional, where the higher we go, again, because nobody tells us, we start to think we're exceptional. And we conflate excellent work with exceptionalism. So now suddenly I deserve a slightly more expensive meal and then fill in the blanks.
Interesting. Okay, so uh, we're in uncertain times, we're in challenging times. And how do you see this leading to more ineffective leadership, people being promoted into boss roles and being ineffective in them, and what needs to be done about this, Sabina?
The first thing people could do as they get promoted, let me step back. Promotions can be the most dangerous time in your career. Okay, here's another mind bender. Yes, of course, it's time for celebration. But once the bubblies settle down, you're in a new level and it comes with new rules, especially right now. And so, for example, the very strengths that got you promoted are now being seen less charitably by the next that are craning up. So let me give you an example. Let's say somebody is very attentive to details, and generally that's a great strength. It's gotten them promoted. How do you think that shows up to their teams now?
Yeah, it can show up as micromanagerial.
Exactly, right? So that's an obvious one. And that doesn't mean you don't stay attentive to details. I hear a lot as I'm coaching CEOs now about I have to manage in founder mode, as in I've got to get into more of the details and so on. So yes, the times might call for more attention to detail, but you also want to add an and of how can you be attentive to detail and empowering to others? What might that look like? Here are some less obvious ones that my clients are surprised shows up that way in the new level with the new rules. If they're strategic, it can show up as them being manipulative. If they're empathetic, it can show up as being indecisive. This happened to Junaid, who was in HR, got a big promotion at an executive level, and he's having endless cups of coffee with everybody because he's so pivoted to building those relationships. And people are like, that's great for the first month. But by month 3, when he's not making any decisions or he's swaying his decisions based on the last person who came in because he's so empathetic to them, that's a problem.
Right. So our strengths in the individual contributor roles or in the level down can actually become a blind spot or a block to elevate ourselves in leadership.
Yes. And this is, to be clear, this is not about what got you here won't get you there. I am not saying abandon those strengths. We want empathy in the Junaids of the world. It's about adding an and. How can I be empathetic? And maybe I'm going to give myself a time window within which to make a decision. So we can serve both sides. So that's one of the big challenges. And I don't just see this with individual contributor to manager, but first line level manager to manager of managers, or manager of managers to executive. The rules change in every level. And you've got to be extra mindful because, again, remember, power distorts communication. So things are going to be turned down in volume from below till it's too late.
And then power can corrupt us if we end up letting it get to our heads too much. And how much have you seen that in your career, that highest levels in an organization?
To me, it's the pressure that corrupts us, because the higher we go, the more pressure there is. There's tremendous pressure. There's huge responsibility. And I haven't yet come across a manager. I'm sure there are some there, few and far between, but I have not come across a manager yet who said, Sabina, my morning routine includes looking in the mirror and chanting to myself, who can I make miserable today? And yet, every employee has a story of that boss, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you've written a whole book on toxic behaviors. So what happens in between when they wake up in the morning and by the time they're driving home, having made a whole bunch of people miserable without their intention? The higher up you go, the more pressure there is. The more pressure there is, the more you're going to act out on things if you're not careful, and the less people are going to remind you of it. One of the things you can do to address this is to design a feedback system. What do I mean by that? Feedback, the higher up you go, is also a scant quantity.
Mm-hmm.
Many of my executives say, I think I'm doing a good job. And until I do a really bad job and the board tells me to leave, I think I'm okay. They don't get feedback. Now, here's my belief. My belief is that the quality of feedback you receive is directly proportional to the quality of questions you use to design that feedback system, to craft it. So if you said, "How did I do at that all hands?" I mean, what's somebody going to say? "Yeah, you did great, boss." You get that reassurance, you don't get feedback. But if you made it small and specific, what's one thing that I did well? What's one thing I could improve on? Now there's less wiggle room for them to just say, "You did great, boss." And depending on how much psychological safety there is in the organization, people might still not give you enough quality data there. You could make it a third person ask. What would my biggest fan say is the one thing? And what would my biggest critic say is the one thing? So then they don't even have to own that. Now, you might argue, well, don't we want to create some courageous wholeness, some candid conversations? Yes. But the first step is to get the feedback any way you can. And over time, if you're consistent and you actually do something with the feedback people have given you and close the loop, you can start to have more direct conversations.
That's brilliant. If we can get leaders or managers to a place where they're open to that feedback and the small feedback, the one thing, or I love that idea, and I love that you've done so many 360s. I do 360s as well, and they are such a gold mine of learning and insights if they're debriefed properly and used properly. And I see it go both ways sometimes. They need to be supported through coaching and support.
Exactly. And Laura, I imagine you see this too, is that receiving a 360, now I do interview-based 360s, so people get about 50 pages of verbatim comments from their people. It's a visceral, strong experience because nobody is perfect. And now they're hearing it in the exact words of their colleagues. So it can be really overwhelming.
Oh, yes. Yeah, especially if you're highly sensitive or an empathetic person. It's like, "Ouch."
Yes. I mean, short of being a sociopath, I think it's going to impact you. And so I'm a minimalist. I'm a huge proponent of micro habits, and just about every chapter in the book has a micro habit example. Is how can you do it in such a small way that it's so ridiculously small that you're going to laugh out loud when I tell you to do it that way? And that's what then when you're successful, that's what then feeds and feeds and feeds and becomes a snowball effect over time. But you got to start tiny. I mean, for me, I for 20 years had hoped that I would become a runner and never did because I thought, oh, I've got to go to the gym for an hour or at least 30 minutes. And that was just too daunting for a couch potato like me. Until I did micro habits and I said, and so after 20 years, no success, 3 years of micro habits, I ran my first marathon last year.
Wow, congratulations, Sabina.
Thank you. Thank you. But to get to that level of badassery, of being able to run a marathon, you've got to start really tiny. And here's like, I could not run a kilometer. I could not run a kilometer. And I would increase it by 0.1 kilometers. Actually, I did it in miles. I would increase it in 0.1 miles every 3 weeks until I got to a place where I could then have bigger increments. But again, not too big. You've got to notice whenever you stop doing it, it's too big. Go back to half the size.
I love it. Yeah, it's the small things that make a big difference, and layering them on because uh, you're so busy, right? We're all so busy. That's a common theme, and I like how you address that in your book, actually. So let's talk about that for a moment. The busyness trap. Tell us more.
Well, Laura, I'm sure you've seen this. Busyness in our society has become a badge of honor. And how many times do you meet somebody? I know we didn't do this with each other at the event where we met at South by Southwest, but often a greeting is, "How are you? Busy?" And what are you supposed to say? Because if you say no, they're going to think you're some loser who's not worth talking with. That's kind of the implicit assumption in our culture these days. Yet I think busy is a sign of failure. It's a sign of not having been mindful enough of doing what you need to do first. Yesterday, I was on a call with some friends, and one of my friends said that she's really overwhelmed, and the top thing on her mind is to learn how to say no. And I said, let's call her Jane. Uh, I said, Jane, you actually are a master at saying no. You are, that's your superpower. You just don't know it. You are saying no to all the things you tell me that matter to you,
That is such a great reframe, Sabina. I love it.
right? So you know how to say no. We just need to flip what you say no to. It's not the how. Now there are a couple of ways you can engineer that. One is called a time portfolio, which is where you create, just like you would with, say, your investments, you create a portfolio. Like, look, we say time is our most valuable asset. Do we really treat it like that? So, what if you created a portfolio, big chunks, categories where you spend your time at work? Maybe I have my staff meetings and one on ones and performance reviews with my direct reports, and that's a certain percentage. Then I've got to do similar things for my boss, attend their staff meetings, and so on. Maybe I go speak at conferences. I have a chunk of time dedicated to email and other communications. Maybe I do project reviews. So have some big chunks of time. Roughly what percentage are you spending in each? And by the way, they need to add up to 100. I cannot tell you how many of my clients, even though it's a percentage, will end up with like 170%. Yeah, that's not possible. This is simple math, but we have magical thinking whenever it comes to time. So you create a rough idea of where you're spending your time, then create a where do you what adjustments do you want to make? Now, the biggest mistake you can make is to jump from point A to point B. Like, let's say you're spending 35% of your time on email and communications, and you want that to get to 15%. It's a fantasy to immediately go from 35 to 15. So the third thing you want to do is have a incremental, really incremental shift. Maybe I go from 35% to 33% by turning off notifications or by delaying checking email first thing in the morning by 60 seconds. So you've got very, very small adjustments till you take that 35% and get to 15%. And that's the time portfolio at work, which helps you with that busyness trap because now you're becoming more intentional about where and how much of your time you spend on each thing.
Wonderful. It almost reminds me of when you're working on your nutrition, what I'm eating, and you're always surprised at, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was having so many calories. It's the same thing. I didn't realize I was spending that much time on emails, which are a monster. Emails are a monster.
There's that joke that, what do you do? I'm a CEO, chief email officer. Mm, And I'm so glad you picked up on diet and nutrition, Laura, because this idea of a time portfolio actually came to me from that. Because I read that most diets actually backfire. People end up gaining even more weight at the end of the diet. But the thing they said that works best is when people write down what they're eating, when they log their food. And so I thought, well, what if we start to log time?
Yes, and I think this is a big contribution of your book, this busyness trap, and I think the white or blank space concept is really great too. So, can you tell us more about the blank space?
I love that because I have done that myself and received such great value. And it has transformed certain clients' careers, their promotions. One of them got a double promotion. Here's the idea. If you if you look at the print inside my book, okay, so there are words, there are paragraphs, but what else is there on that page?
White space?
Yes, white space, blank space. If we took away all that blank space, would you be able to make any sense if there was no spacing, right, between sentences, paragraphs, pages?
Nobody would read your book. Let's show us the cover, by the way. It's a beautiful cover. I just want our YouTube
Thank
followers to
you.
see it. You're the boss.
Thank
It
you so
just
much.
shines. It's so bright. It's like it's lit up from behind. Great job, Sabina.
Thank you. That I wish I could take credit for it. That was the cover designer.
Yeah, but you approved it. You were part of this.
So yes, you would know. So blank space is really the idea of trying to make more sense of the ideas and thoughts that are in your mind. When you're under pressure, one of the best things you can do is do nothing. And that is this practice. Because usually when we're under pressure, what are we doing? We're getting busier. We're writing, we're scorning out sticky notes and notes on my phone and waking up at 3 in the morning and running, sacrificing gym time, etc. But what if you unplugged from everything and did nothing? Here's what happens. Research shows that our biggest insights come when we give our brains a rest in the shower, on our commutes, during exercising. That's not a coincidence. It allows us to sift out the signal from the noise. It allows us to read what's on that page and make sense of it. So, in practice, what this looks like in its fullest form is you take 2 hours during the work week, back to back, where you step away from your office, step away from being online. You don't read, you don't talk to anyone else, and you see what happens. Now, that is very difficult for most people to do.
I'm reacting to that as well. I'm thinking, oh, how would I do that, Sabina?
Right? Because we are so used to numbing ourselves out, to easing and pacifying ourselves with distractions. And we're busy, busy, busy. Now, when I first started this idea with my clients, we experimented with 4 hours. That is not practical. 2 hours, I guarantee you, anyone can get to it over time. Now, you might need to start with 30 seconds again if you're not used to silence, if you're not used to just being. We forget that we're human beings, not human doings. So, right? So start with very small increments and see what happens if it's scary. Now, what do most of my clients do? Some of them go for a walk in nature. There's one guy who wanted to taste sample pies from every pie shop in his city. So he would sit down, he would buy 2 pies in the 2 hours, and then he would doodle. Or you could take that one, those ideas that we always have and we go, oh, yeah, someday when I'm less busy, I'm going to work on it. Well, you could make that the theme of your blank space date. This is exactly what happened with one of my clients. She took all her sticky notes that she'd collected over the week, and as she laid them out in her blank space at a coffee shop, she realized it's actually not any one of these stickies. The bigger picture is we are vulnerable in the Asia Pacific market. She ended up writing a memo that she sent to the board and got a double promotion to then lead that effort. But it would have taken her a lot longer and potentially compromised the health and very existence of the company if she hadn't carved out that space to see what emerges.
Beautiful. And we have so much wisdom within. We have so much wisdom within, but so much noise coming at us that we can't even hear ourselves think. And it's the thinking that's being impacted, and the creative thoughts take space. And I totally hear what you're saying, Sabina.
Yes, Laura, and talk about reduction of pressure. Because often when we're under pressure, what are we thinking? We're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm in a corner. I don't know what to do. There's no way out of this, or the way out of it is a really distasteful one. Well, the answer is hiding in plain sight if you just give it some space to emerge. You are wiser than you know. You have more ideas than you realize.
And the wisdom lies within. It's the inner wisdom, which is masterful. So I ask all my guests this. I like the term work life wellness, not balance, being well in your work and well in your life. And how does this play out for you, Sabina?
Love that question and love the term wellness because it got me really thinking, Laura, when you sent this question to me ahead of time as well, like what does workplace wellness look like? Well, I am very privileged and fortunate to take on work that I am truly excited by, people that I want to work with. I do not take on people where I'm thinking, yeah, I don't know. Now, of course, I'm proven wrong many times because first impressions are not always the best impressions. But so for work, for me, it is being really choosy and choosing the work at this point that I can afford to do, that I know will light me up. And as a result, I will bring my best work to my clients. On the life side, for me, yes, it is very enmeshed, both things, especially since I run my own business as an entrepreneur. The biggest thing for me is micro habits. And I have, as I shared, I've now run a marathon solely on the back of micro habits, and I've done so many other things like that. And what I'm working on right now is meditation. I have had a very hard time, talk about blank space, sitting still long enough to meditate. And I know everybody gets distracted and they have what they call the monkey mind, but it's so hard for me that I wasn't doing it. So now I can say I have a daily meditation practice. But you know what my daily meditation practice entails? One inhale and one exhale. That is my daily meditation practice. Just one. And you know what, Laura? It's still so, so helpful because the first thing I do when I wake up is take a deep inhale all the way from my toes to the tip of my head and a deep exhale all the way from my tip of my head to my toes. I put on a smile on my face as I do that, and it grounds me. So I'm not being facetious when I say I have a daily meditation practice or trying to cheat. It actually works. Now, there are some days now that I have managed to do a 30-minute session, but that's icing on the cake. So that's what I do with wellness is I do something really, really micro, but then that ensures that I do it every single day.
Micro makes a difference. Less can be more. And I loved your concept of breathing from the top of your head to your toes. I actually haven't heard that. I've done so many talks about breathing with guests, but that concept with a smile on your face is just beautiful, Sabina. Thank you. I encourage people to try that.
I was noticing you were breathing. Were you doing an inhale and an exhale as I was talking?
Yes,
Yeah, I noticed that you were doing that as I was describing it.
it's great. Really, really great. So you seem to me to be someone who's always learning and evolving. And what do you read or listen to for your development? What stands out lately for you, Sabina, that you want to share?
Yeah, I'm not monogamous in my reading. I usually read 4 or 5 books at the same time, picking them up at different places when the mood strikes. I loved a fiction book actually, and there's a lot of research that shows fiction really helps you grow. It increases your empathy, etc. Helps you be more creative. And it's called Anomaly, and it was fantastic. It really bended my mind in a way that I hadn't. It challenged my thinking. It was great. And on the nonfiction side, Nation, which I'm just halfway through, it's fantastic. There's science. It's written by an MD. There's a lot of science around it on the brain and neurotransmitters. And she uses stories of actual patients who have addictive behaviors and then she breaks it down into ways in which she's treated them and what has happened as a result. So as coaches and people in the business that we're in, Laura, it's a great way to understand what sticks and what doesn't stick, what compels people and what propels people into success or its opposite.
Or into work addiction, right? Which is, being addicted to workaholism. That's a whole thing. It's a form of addiction.
Absolutely. I definitely am a recovering workaholic. And back to that busyness, it's one that doesn't get noticed. In fact, it's one that gets lauded and praised.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you pulled an all-nighter. Oh my gosh, good for you. Not. There's a real problem there if you have to pull an all-nighter.
Right? Or bosses who say, I really want you to have work-life balance, but secretly they're going, yeah, that person's a keeper because they pull all-nighters on a regular basis.
Exactly. And my final question for you, Sabina, is if you had one wish for a better world when it comes to leadership, what would it be?
That's such a great question. My final wish would be going back to the sole provider, going back to why I don't use the term leader, but leadership as a verb, would be to actually reduce people's dependence on themselves and build other people's growth and potential. So saying, I need help, saying, I don't know the answer to this, saying, can we truly do this together? And I've got your back if you go come back with ideas. That, not hogging it all to ourselves.
Yes, spreading the love in terms of the answers, the help. We all need help, and we're better together than we are separately. We are a connected species.
Exactly. And we are all capable of acts of leadership. Those in positions of authority, it's on us to ignite that in others and to give people permission.
Beautifully put. So, thank you for writing You're the Boss, Become the Manager You Want to Be. I think this is a great book for people starting off on the leadership journey, starting off on becoming a manager that people want to learn from, want to grow from, and will thrive under. And this book, I imagine, can be helpful at any level of this journey. I imagine some of your CEO clients are finding the concepts helpful, Sabina.
They are. The first thing they do is they read it to see if they're in it. After that, they go, oh, yeah, we've used blank space a lot, but this concept is new. I'm going to apply that next. Yeah. Thank you, Laura. Thank you for having me on your show. This is wonderful. It's lovely that our work maps so closely to each other.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the side of toxic bosses and how we can manage and navigate and recover, etc. You're on the side of how do we grow more great bosses. And I think both angles are needed in this world of work. So thank you so much, Sabina. I've learned from you. You've shed a light on some important concepts that are getting me thinking. And thank you for helping grow better leadership in our world.
Thank you.
I hope you stay well. Thank you for tuning in to Where Work Meets Life. If you found this content valuable, please rate, review, and share with others who may benefit. If you're struggling in your work life and need support, I offer coaching sessions. You can book a complimentary consult on my website. I'm also a passionate keynote speaker and would love to discuss your professional speaking needs. Visit my website, drlaura.live, to sign up for my monthly e-newsletter filled with tips and resources to help you stay well.